She had millions in the bank while crying poverty online and calling me an abuser. But those bank statements I'd been holding for 3 years were about to expose her biggest lie. Some betrayals cut deep because they come from people we trusted. Others sting because they're so calculated, so deliberate in their cruelty. But the betrayal that haunts you forever? That's when someone rewrites your entire history together, painting you as the villain in a story where you were nothing but kind. This is the story of Natalia, a trust fund millionaire who built her entire identity on being a struggling artist, and how her web of lies finally caught up with her. I was a Russian engineering student living my American dream, tall enough for basketball, decent enough at high jump to earn a small athletic scholarship. It wasn't much, but every dollar mattered when you're an international student trying to make it work. I'd come to America with hopes of staying permanently, building a life in a country that felt full of possibilities. That's when I met her. Natalia was everything I thought I wanted: beautiful, confident, from a wealthy Connecticut family. She was studying fine arts, though at 23 she was barely a sophomore. No rush when you've got a trust fund, she'd tell me with a smile, showing me bank statements that arrived in the mail like clockwork. 6 figures a year, just for existing, forever. We moved in together, and for a while life felt perfect. She loved taking photos. She was the first person I knew who owned a selfie stick, and everything became a photo opportunity. I created social media accounts just so she could tag me, watching as her friends became my friends, as our lives intertwined across digital platforms. Her friends called me Drago, which always made me laugh. I looked nothing like Ivan Drago, but the nickname stuck. Natalia would leave those trust fund statements scattered around our apartment, casual reminders of wealth that seemed almost impossible to me. While I worked at the campus bookstore to make ends meet, she lived without ever thinking about money. But there were cracks in the paradise, small things that should have been warning signs. She was dramatic, prone to creating scenes when her favorite personal shopper wasn't available or when restaurant staff didn't move fast enough. She treated service workers with a coldness that made me uncomfortable. Most troubling was her persona. Around me, she was herself, wealthy, privileged, secure. But around certain people, she performed a different character entirely. She'd pretend to be a struggling bohemian artist, making up stories about eating grass stew as a child, a story she'd stolen from my own family's history during wartime. Then came the question that changed everything. What do you think about open relationships? I told her I wasn't interested. She claimed she was just curious, that she'd read something about them. But looking back, I know she already had someone in mind, or someone already in her bed. Within weeks, she was moving out. Our relationship isn't working, she said, as casually as discussing the weather. Could we still be friends? Of course, she assured me. She left behind clothes, papers, and those bank statements. Asked me to hold on to them, said she'd pick them up someday. That someday never came. I discovered later that she'd blocked me on social media immediately after moving out, systematically deleting anyone who might connect us. I finished my degree, moved to another state for my master's program, then returned to Russia to start my career. Life moved forward, and I assumed we'd simply grown apart. For 3 years, her belongings sat in moving boxes, unopened. Her expensive designer clothes, her personal papers, and those bank statements, forgotten artifacts of a relationship that seemed like ancient history. But Natalia hadn't forgotten about me. She'd been busy rewriting our story. When I finally checked social media after years of absence, I discovered I'd been blocked from contacting her. Curious, I browsed her profiles as an anonymous visitor, expecting to see the same drama-filled updates, the same bohemian artist persona. What I found was character assassination. Post after post painted me as an abuser, a threat, a monster. She claimed I'd threatened her, destroyed her self-esteem, even hinted at physical violence. Her friends were rallying around her, some threatening to kill me or kick my butt if they ever saw me. Others talked about reporting me to school administrators, having my degree revoked, getting me arrested. She'd taken our entire relationship and twisted it into a horror story where I was the villain and she was the brave survivor. Her friends ate it up, praising her courage for not reporting me to authorities and bearing her cross as a survivor. But the most disturbing lie was about her medical procedure. She posted dramatically about being unable to have children due to a traumatic assault, implying some terrible attack had stolen her ability to become a mother. Her followers showered her with sympathy and support. I still had the PDF she'd sent me years earlier, documentation of her elective sterilization, a $10,000 procedure she'd chosen while living in luxury with her parents. No trauma, no assault. Just a wealthy woman making a personal choice and then weaponizing it for social media sympathy. Meanwhile, she continued her struggling artist charade, posting about eating scraps, living paycheck to paycheck, railing against the wealthy elite while secretly collecting six figures annually from her trust fund. Her new boyfriend, who looked remarkably like a longer-haired version of me, appeared to genuinely believe she was broke. They shared an apartment, and he seemed to be supporting them both while she played the starving artist. For a moment, I considered letting it go. I was happy in Russia, successful in my career. Why care what some social media addicts thought about me? Then I remembered those bank statements sitting in my apartment. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. I packaged her expensive designer clothes and accessories, items worth thousands of dollars, and sent them to the nonprofit where she worked. I included a note suggesting they could raise significant funds by selling these items, if Natalia was willing to part with them, of course. But the real masterpiece was what I did with those bank statements. I spent hours creating a digital collage, her most hypocritical posts about poverty and struggle, paired with highlighted bank statements showing her massive wealth, her dramatic claims about eating grass stew as a child, next to deposits showing six-figure annual income. Her posts about depending on art to survive, alongside trust fund statements guaranteeing wealth for life. The crown jewel was pairing her post about being unable to have children due to an attack with her own medical documentation showing she'd paid $10,000 for elective sterilization at one of the most expensive medical centers in Connecticut. My Russian friend, who didn't speak English but understood betrayal perfectly, helped me share these revelations across her social networks. Over 300 of her friends suddenly saw the truth behind her carefully constructed lies. The fallout was immediate and devastating. Her friend count began dropping like a stone, from over 1,200 friends to barely 600 within a week. Her followers abandoned her in droves. The nonprofit organizations she'd supported, while sitting on millions, didn't appreciate discovering their passionate advocate was secretly wealthy. Her boyfriend? Well, imagine coming home from your day job to discover your struggling artist girlfriend has been sitting on a fortune while watching you pay the bills. Within days, denial turned to damage control, then to complete social media silence. Her accounts, the platforms where she'd built her entire identity, simply vanished. The nonprofit called to thank me for the donation. They confirmed the bank statements were legitimate and asked if the designer items were really hers. When I explained they were gifts from her wealthy family, they wondered why she tried to deny owning them. "Does Natalia still work there?" I asked. "Oh no," they told me. She moved back home with her parents. Back to the 8-bedroom mansion she'd grown up in, the same house she'd claimed to be too poor to visit regularly. Months later, I checked again. Her digital footprint, years of carefully curated lies, had been completely erased. The girl who'd lived her entire life online had been forced into digital exile. I never understood why she'd chosen to destroy my reputation. We'd never fought, never even raised our voices at each other. I'd been nothing but kind to her, supportive of her dreams, patient with her drama. Perhaps that's what made her betrayal so cutting. It was completely unnecessary. But I learned something valuable from Natalia's downfall. The truth has a way of surfacing. No matter how deep you try to bury it, you can craft the perfect online persona, spin the most convincing sob story, paint yourself as the victim in every situation. But eventually, reality catches up. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's simply about truth. Natalia built her identity on lies, gained sympathy through deception, and destroyed relationships with fabricated stories. When the truth finally emerged, her carefully constructed world collapsed not because I sought revenge, but because lies can only hold up for so long before they crumble under their own weight. Some people live by the sword of deception. As Natalia learned, that same sword can cut both ways. from Russia with truth.